We have a combination of two parshiot we read this Shabbat, which are Bahar and Bechukotai, finishing off the third book of the Torah, the book of Vayikra. And also today, we're in the waning moments of Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. And if we were together in Meron right now, the sky would be lit up by bonfires. And fortunately, even here in San Diego, we've got a couple of gatherings taking place right now by the beach, celebrating Lag BaOmer. We're going to talk about both today. The name of the class is More or Less. And I want to begin with an insight into the first of the two Torah readings of this week, which is Parshat Bahar. Bahar begins talking about the laws of Shmitah, the seventh sabbatical year. And we're going to look at something which ties into this theme of more or less. And it's interesting because the Torah very directly associates the fulfillment of the seventh sabbatical year with the Jewish people living securely in the land of Israel. And in fact, when the Jewish people were exiled, one of the reasons were, and just as the Torah talks about, when they're exiled the first time, is because they didn't give the sabbatical year to the land. They abused the land. They weren't careful to let it rest every seventh year. And of course, the number 7 in Jewish tradition is always associated with rest, the seventh day of the week, even the seventh month of the year, which according to the Torah's count is the month of Tishrei, is the month that's filled with holidays and celebrations and days when we don't work. And then every seventh year is Shmitah, where the land is resting and we all share in the ownership of the land. And then 7 times 7 is 49, and the 50th year becomes the Jubilee year. Those are the laws that are detailed in the beginning of this week's Parsha. But this association of finding security in the land, it's interesting because we know with Shabbat that it gives people a sense of grounding, a sense of home attachment, family attachment, and it even attaches us, according to the Torah, this idea of the seventh sabbatical year with feeling secure in the land. And I want to point out an irony, which is the sort looked at by many commentators, but it goes as follows. It's an amazing concept to think about an agricultural society ceasing agricultural activity every 7 years. And in fact, I'm always fond of quoting that the Roman historians, when Rome first came to occupy the land of Israel, which was toward the end of the Second Temple era, and the Shmitah, the first seventh sabbatical year came, the generals thought that the Jews were rebelling by not planting any crops, and they became very alarmed. And of course, paying tribute to Rome meant that a portion of everything you grew was taxed to you, and either the proceeds of that sale or the items themselves would be sent back to Rome as tribute. But the Jews weren't rebelling. They were in consonance with the sense of belonging in the land of Israel and the sense that our homeland is treated with extraordinary kedushat haaretz, sanctity of the land. And this, of course, ties in with the overarching theme of the third book of the Torah, which, as we've talked about throughout, has to do with the laws of holiness, the laws of sanctity, the laws of dedication. So let's pick up the narrative in chapter 25. If you have a stone chumash, it's right at the bottom of page 698, 699. Chapter 25, sentence 18, commenting on these laws of the Jubilee year. The Torah says, V'asitem et chukotai, et mishpatai tishmeru. You observe these laws, V'shaftem ha'oretz levetach, and you will dwell securely in the land. Continuing in 19, V'natno ha'oretz piryah, the land will give its fruits, V'achaltem l'sova, you will eat and be satiated, V'shaftem levetach oleh, and again, you'll dwell in the land securely. In the sense of securely here, it has a double meaning because it's repeated twice. So one has to do with you'll avoid being exiled from the land. And the other is that you'll be so satisfied that you won't be tempted even to travel out of the land for any reason. You'll feel so rooted and comfortable and connected to the land of Israel. And then an unusual sentence in sentence 20 always intrigues me. If you will ask, if you will say, what will we eat in the seventh year? Behold, we will not sow and we will not gather in our crops. Are we all going to starve to death? Sentence 21, I will ordain my blessing for you in the sixth year, and it will yield a crop sufficient for the 3-year period. You'll have this amazing crop where your storehouses will be so overstuffed that you'll say to yourself, wow, I hope we can finish this off within this year and the next year of Shmitah and carry over to what the 8th year, the beginning of the next cycle will be, because we have so much food, we don't even know what to do with it. When you think about in times of plenty, people would can foods, they would preserve foods, realizing that there's too much that we can eat at this time. So let's see if we can carry it forward in case there would be a year of famine. However, that's not the way the Torah is read. And Rashi says right away, when the initial thrust of the sentence, you'll be secure in the land and you will eat and be satisfied. Rashi says something very profound. Always says something profound, but this is strikingly profound. Rashi says, you won't have any more food than in a normal year. So you're going to finish the 6th year. You'll bring in an ordinary crop. Ordinarily, it gets you through the winter, gets you through the next planting season, and then you expect the next crop to come in. What will happen is that you will eat less, and you'll be so satisfied, you'll have no interest in eating more than that. And so lo and behold, the 500 bushels of wheat that you grew, which would normally last you through the winter season, it's all of a sudden going to become plenty because you're going to feel this unbelievable satisfaction. And then the Torah goes on. And this is where the Seforno picks up on Rashi and says something very amazing. Seforno says, but if you're still uneasy, if you're the kind of person who's wondering, thank God, what's going to happen? I'm nervous. I've got my usual 500 bushels of grain. I'm thankful the land yielded its usual harvest, but I'm not going to plant next year. I'm nervous. I'm worried. I'm not so confident in this interpretation that I'll eat less and be just as satisfied. I don't know. I'm not sure that's going to work for me. So then the pasuk says, all right, if you are that type of a person, here's what's going to happen. You'll have this unbelievably big harvest, and you'll have, instead of 500 bushels a week, you'll have 2,000 bushels a week. And you'll say, oh my goodness, look at all this wheat. I have to build a special storehouse. I'll have to take care of it. I have to preserve it. But I have no worries whatsoever for the next couple of years until through the Shemitah year, until I plant in the 8th year when we start the cycle again. I see with my own 2 eyes, I can kick the tires of all the food I could possibly eat until then. So now I'm at peace. Now I'm tranquil. Now I'm trusting in God. Now I can rely on the Torah. Okay? So 2 types of people, and maybe 2 different generations of people. Maybe there'll be generations where people will be satisfied with less. They'll be more trusting in God, and they'll say, okay, we only have 500 bushels, but I'm sure it'll be enough. And lo and behold, they'll sit down for breakfast, and they'll take a quarter bowl of cereal, and they'll say, wow, I couldn't eat another drop. I'm satisfied. It's, as Rashi says, it's blessed in my innards, and it's just as satisfying as having a full bowl. And then the next day, and lo and behold, you get through this period of time, and you say, wow, look how wonderful Hashem is, that when I trust in Hashem, I'm just as satisfied with my life, and I feel more secure in my life than I would otherwise. And then there'll be another generation, or maybe different farmers, I'm not sure, and they're going to say, no, I'm nervous. I'm too nervous, God. I just see 500 bushels of wheat. I'm really worried. So God says, okay, so you'll have 2,000 bushels of wheat. And you'll say, 2,000 bushels of wheat. Wow, what a blessing. What an overload. Look how clear Hashem is in rewarding me for my trust and my observance of the Shmitah. And then comes the Ramban. And he has a very amazing insight. And the Ramban questions. He says, which is the bigger miracle? Being satisfied with 500 bushels over the full 2-year period, 2.5-year period, or having an amazing bumper crop of 2,000 bushels? And the Ramban answers differently than I think you and I might have thought. And the Ramban says it's more miraculous that all of a sudden my quarter bowl of cereal fills me up and satisfies me. It's a hidden miracle. It's a quiet miracle. It's God, so to speak, sitting down at the breakfast table with me, putting God's arm around my shoulder and saying, relax, take a quarter of a bowl, enjoy it. Stop with all your calculations. See how you feel lunchtime. And lo and behold, lunchtime will come and say, I just give me a half a sandwich because I'm still full from breakfast, sort of like when you go to a hotel in Israel. Or even dinner time will come and you'll say, I don't need this full portion. Just give me a small portion. And you're not doing it because you're worried. You're not doing it because you're concerned. You're not doing it because you're economizing. You're not doing it because you want to put more into your IRA. But rather you're doing it just out of your sense of full-fledged satisfaction. V'chaltem l'sova. And this is where this name of the class, more or less. And then comes Rav Elya Lopian. And he says, let's look at it from a different perspective. Who's got the better deal? The guy who gets the bumper crop of 2,000 bushels of wheat. You know how much harder he has to work harvest time? You know how much he has to build onto his granary? He has to store things. He has to check on it. He has to make sure his grain is okay. He's got to build, in addition to a silo, he's got to fill up his playroom with wheat because he's a little nervous. I'm not going to be able to plant next year, and I see I've got enough wheat, but I need to make sure I take care of it, and it doesn't get lost, it doesn't get rained on, it doesn't get ruined, it doesn't get buggy. So Rav Elya Lopian says, look at this security factor itself and understand what a bracha the Torah is offering you on the condition, on the assumption that you really trust in God. If you can muster the temerity and the conviction to be a farmer who says, all I know is I'm not planting next year, it's Shmitah. And what am I going to do? Well, I've got my 500 bushels. Let's see what happens. God runs the world. God knew what God was doing when God said not to plant the land next year. Okay? And lo and behold, I get through that year and the next year. And I'm feeling to myself, I have never been so satisfied and fulfilled with less when I had such a big surplus. And look at the lessons the Torah is putting forward to us. Look how the Torah is continuing to differentiate and suggest to us a holy attitude toward life. That when I take my portion from the world, it's not a question of how does it compare with somebody else's. It's not a question with, well, what does the forecast say? Do I have enough for the future? Which we know today how prevalent it is that people never feel that sense of security. They never feel that sense of reliance. The Torah is opening our eyes here, and Rashi and the Seforno and the Ramban and Rav Elya Lopian, they're laying out the cards on the table. And they're saying, who's the most fortunate, blessed, secure person in the world? The person who just says, regardless of what this crop is, I'm not planting next year. God has a plan. I'll trust in God. God runs the world. And if my crop comes in even at 400 bushels, where I usually get 500 and I'm planting the next year, I think, let's see what happens. And then you sit down for breakfast and you say, this is great. Thank you very much. And then you sit down through 1 year goes by and you say, gee, look, out of my 400 bushels, my less than average crop, I'm still thriving and I'm still well. And then you go through the next year the Shmitah year, where the whole people of Israel are occupied with spiritual matters and they're not able to do their usual work. They're on furlough. It's Shabbat Haaretz. It's the Shabbos of the land. And I go through that year. And then it's time for me to resume planting. And lo and behold, I still have a full stomach. I still have a sense of satisfaction. And look how deep and connected I would be to the land that God intended us going through such an experience. Look how it would transform me. Look how it would calm me down. Look how it would do for me just what Shabbat does every week for many of us. It gives us an opportunity to have a reprieve. It gives us an opportunity to fill ourselves with spirituality. It gives us a chance to tune in to a quality of living which is holy. That's the lesson we get from the Parsha. And I want to just continue with two lessons from Lag BaOmer. Today is the 33rd day of the Omer. Chance to take haircuts if you have the custom not to shave, to resume having weddings and celebrations. Why? So the Talmud tells us that there's a rabbinic overlay of mourning due to the death of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, that towering figure whose life transcended the very end of the Second Temple and went all the way through the rebellion and the Roman suppression of that rebellion, long period of time. So Rabbi Akiva began teaching Torah, and he amassed an unprecedented 24,000 students. And the Talmud tells us they began dying in droves. And during this period of time, they all passed away. How could that be? These are Torah scholars, future leaders of the Jewish people, engaged in the study of Torah, the very thing that God commands us to do. And the answer is, the Talmud says very insightfully, Lo nagu kavod zeh lazeh. They didn't respect one another. And I wanted the insight there, because after all, it's not a capital crime not to show respect. It's not a nice thing. It certainly doesn't create Kiddush Hashem. Doesn't create an environment where people say, oh, if only my child would also learn Torah like this. But what it was a product of, we understand today, is that when they were all engaged in study and they looked at the text or they looked at an interpretation, and one understood it one way and another understood it a different way, and they would want to discuss it, perhaps reach a meeting of the minds, perhaps reach an even deeper understanding than either of the two of them had, they were dismissive. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't know why he doesn't understand it the way I do. I'm surprised. I'm not going to waste my time thinking about his perspective. I've got my own, and I like my own better, which people, and we all know this about our own thinking, people tend to like their own thinking more than they like other people's thinking. When two people experience something, or when they talk about something, and each one has a different perspective, we tend to be dismissive. And of course, today in 2023, we go much further. We dismiss the person as no good. He's an idiot. He's guilty of some crime. So hard for people to say, I don't see it the way you see it, but let me think about your understanding more, because that's really what Talmud Torah is meant to be. That's the real highlight of Talmud Torah. So due to that failure, due to that sense of lack of respecting, perhaps a sense of arrogance in their own view, whatever the mix was, and these were great people, God decided they can't be the bearers of Torah for the next generation. And sadly and tragically, they passed away. And Rabbi Akiva had to rebuild Torah. And what I would attach this thinking to is the Talmud in Eruv in 13a. Explains that there was once a strong difference of opinion between the students of Hillel and the students of Shammai, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. And they debated the issue for 3 years. Can you imagine? No, I don't. I think you're missing the boat because of this. Well, what about that? Okay, let me think about that. No, but I still don't see your point because I think this solution's better. And they both arrived at different conclusions of what the Jewish law should be, and they could not, no matter how much they tried, they could not resolve their difference. And a bat call, a voice from heaven came down and said, the law is like Beit Hillel. Even though both opinions are godly opinions, they're not the product of small-mindedness, they're not the product of missing the boat, they're not the product of any personal lacking, prejudice, or anything like that. They're both holy opinions, but the decision will go like Beit Hillel, which we tend to do, with a couple, very few exceptions. And then the Talmud asks, well, why would that be? Why do we decide this complex, deep issue according to Beit Hillel? And the Talmud answers unequivocally, you know why? Because whenever they were asked about this matter, they would always say, Beit Shammai, the students of Shammai, this is their view, and this is what they hold, and this is what they believe. And they would first explain that, which they didn't agree with. Then they'd say, but I come from a school, my yeshiva, us students of Hillel, we hold like this for these reasons. And it was that sense of always giving weight, and that's what the word kavod means. Kavod in Hebrew, which means to honor or to dignify, comes from the idea of being heavy. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not pulling the carpet out from under it, but I'm giving it weight. Yes, you asked me a question. Oh, it's a deep question. We once debated this for 3 years. And I won't tell you the conclusion we came to yet, because I'll tell you the other group of students, they all decided like this because of this reason. Oh, that sounds very smart. But we decided differently because of this and this and this. Obviously, the person listening is a lay person. They can't make that choice. But these deep students could make such a choice. And what the value, the Jewish value is, that showing kavod, giving weight to another viewpoint, particularly a viewpoint you disagree with, instead of it being a source of divisiveness, strife, name calling, all the things we know that we're so familiar with, religiously and politically and in every sphere of life, that I don't know what that person was thinking when they decided to wear that suit, or whatever the case might be. So the Torah tradition, the holiness of the Jewish people is that when we have two competing viewpoints that we can't even recognize which one has the ultimate truth, we will give the banner of truth and halacha to the opinion that shows the most respect and regard and gives the most weight to the opposing opposite viewpoint. What a beautiful idea. What an inspiring idea. If only we had a breath of that today. Just imagine how different the Jewish people would be with such an attitude. And we see something analogous to this with the other more dominant reason for Lag BaOmer, for celebrating Lag BaOmer, and that is that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, an eventual student of Rabbi Akiva, he passed away on this day. And the Talmud tells us a story about him. The story is well known. I'll tell it to you in brief. But he spoke out on a political issue, and the Roman court said he's deserving of execution. And he and his son, Elazar, hid in a cave for years. They subsisted miraculously on water and carob. That's why when I was a kid, they always gave you carob to eat, and nobody really liked it as a little kid. I think today people are much more fond of it. That's how they lived. But famously, they came out of the cave. Came out of the cave because Eliyahu Hanavi appeared to them. They were very holy people and said, the Romans have given up looking for you. You can come out. They walk out and they see farmers planting the field. It's not Shmitah here. It's a normal year. They're entitled to plant the fields. But they're so disdainful of any effort that's not purely involved in the study of Torah. that wherever they look, the field catches on fire. They're destroying the world. And indeed, a heavenly voice comes down and says, I didn't take you guys out of the cave to destroy my world. Torah learning is supposed to uphold the world. Go back into the cave. And they go back for another year. And then when they emerge a year later, the sun and laws are every place he looks again, the field starts burning. But Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who has settled within himself, that no longer is the case. What's the idea here? The idea is that in studying Torah, they had become so elevated and so removed from the connection to fellow people that when they came out of this cave, they couldn't help but feeling, how could these farmers waste their time farming? Why aren't they sitting and studying Torah exclusively? And again, in this similar vein, I want you to say they just didn't give enough weight, enough kavod to the work and to the lifestyle and to the rumkeit, the Judaism of these farmers. They were also holy people. But they dismissed them immediately. Oh, look, they're not studying. How could they spend their time not studying? And the same voice that told them to come out says, you better go back in there. This is not a good attitude. Interestingly, the answer was spend another year studying. And then when you come out, then you'll have a deeper understanding that things are not as black and white. And that, yes, you may have a viewpoint that has immense truth to it, but you've got to allow more for the viewpoint of others. And the Talmud actually goes on to say that one Friday afternoon, they saw an old man carrying 2 bundles of fragrant and herbs or whatever they were, myrtle branches. And they said, why do you have 2? What kind of house do you have? He said, no, it's not because I want to honor the Shabbat. And it says, Shamor, we should guard the Shabbos, and Zohar, and we should remember it. And to me, to properly honor the Shabbat, I want to bring 2 handfuls of fragrance into my house. And what does Reb Shimon Bar Yochai say to his son? Look at that. Look how much we have to learn from that simple farmer, from his inspiration, from his understanding of Judaism, from his less educated but heartfelt conviction. We deign to think we know it all, we have it all, we understand it all. And again, to refer to Pirkei Avot, who's a great person, someone who learns from all others, not just people who have more knowledge than me or have learned longer than I have. So again, let's come back to our theme, more or less. Sometimes learning Torah causes friction amongst people. So is the answer then to learn less Torah? No. The answer is to seize the example of this story and to go back to studying. And in this case, more is more. Because with a deeper understanding with Torah, with really tuning in to the message that Hashem intends us to understand, we come to love all of mankind, certainly to consider with dignity and honor every one of our fellow Jews. We come to perceive within each person that they too are a Tselem Elohim, are being created in the image of God and worthy of respect, worthy of honor, worthy of giving weight to who they are and what they represent, even if I vehemently disagree with things they do, opinions they hold, or whatever, even if they don't please me to be around them, but I can't dismiss them. So we see how less can be more in a surprising way when it comes to observing the sabbatical year. And we see how more is more when it comes to understanding Torah. And I always tell people, you reach a point where your kid's in day school and it's Christmas time and you're checking out in the store and the lady says, Merry Christmas to your kid. Says, no, we don't believe in that. We don't believe that. We don't study that. And you think you're embarrassed. You say, look, kid, cool it. We're Jewish. They're not Jewish. We respect them. And some people say, oh, maybe my kid shouldn't learn this stuff. I'm isolating my kid. The answer is no. follow the example of Shimon Bar Yochai, teach more Torah, so that these beautiful, sublime, holy attitudes of respect and appreciating other people and learning from every person becomes part and parcel of who we are as people. So we're going to finish off the book of Vayikra and understanding the holy, take with us a deeper understanding of the holiness of the Jewish people. And we're finishing celebrating Lag BaOmer, and we're going to take with us this messages of how we're going to treat one another. Have a good evening.